and was placed on a long-term supervision order, but according to court documents, he didn't comply.
They are a significant risk to the communities.
Kashid was a police chief and BC's former Solicitor General.
Can be held in custody and ought to have been held in custody.
With Hopley's criminal history and his alleged failure to follow
Ontario's
supervision rules, his supervision order. Police believe he fled the halfway house to avoid that appearance. Omar?
All right, Melanie, thank you. Coming up, a harrowing escape.
All of a sudden, my car within seconds just filled with black smoke.
An Ontario mother of 3 saved from a burning vehicle. An incredible story of survival out of Ontario tonight. A 32-year-old woman from Hamilton was pulled out of her car by strangers just moments before it went up in flames. Here's CTV's Sean Leathong with the dramatic details.
As her car sat burning on the side of the 401 Saturday night, Jamie Lee Mitchell was in shock. Today, as she watches the video, she can't help but think.
One more minute, I would have sat in that car if those people didn't come out and help me. I wouldn't have gotten out.
The 32-year-old mother of 3 was on her way from Guelph to work in Toronto around 8:30. She just dropped off her 6-year-old son. She noticed cars honking, trying to get her attention. Mitchell pulled over.
All of a sudden, my car within seconds just filled with black smoke. Black smoke, and then I started feeling dizzy.
Mitchell tried desperately to exit the vehicle, climbing out the passenger window. She was helped by a husband and wife who had been honking their horn, having seen the fire underneath the car.
As I fell out of my car, finally getting out the door, they were just right there and just picked me up and grabbed my stuff and just said, run, you gotta go back, run.
Calling 911, they stood, watching. Small explosions, tires, engine. In less than 5 minutes, fire completely engulfing the car. She got out just in time.
If I would have been in there, then I wouldn't have made it. And my kids would not have a mom.
Fire crews arriving soon after, knocking down the fire. Today, the spot along the highway in the eastbound lanes just before Highway 6 South show the aftermath. Mitchell says of the couple who helped, one was an off-duty OPP officer out of Orillia who had been returning from a cheer competition with their kids. The cause of the fire is unknown. Sean Leathong, CTV News.
Picket lines popped up all across Quebec today as more than 420,000 public sector workers staged a one-day walkout. They're angry over the provincial government's latest contract offer.
We are paid peanuts and we're told constantly that we're not working hard enough.
It's not worth it for people to work here anymore.
The job action affecting schools, hospitals, and social services created a headache for parents dropping off their kids. The 4 unions representing workers are threatening more strikes if there's no progress at the bargaining table. Still ahead, the heart of Canadian communities.
The veteran spot for us. We should, keep this Legion going.
The struggle to survive and the risk of closing forever. Veterans across Canada are facing a desperate battle to preserve what has become a social lifeline in communities nationwide. Many Legions are struggling to keep the lights on, facing mounting costs and dwindling membership. Here's CTV's Amy Bergeron-Oliver.
Since the 1940s, the Montgomery Legion has been a community staple, providing a place of comfort and support for veterans and their families.
A safe haven for people to come in, have fun, relax, enjoy, not worry about outside troubles.
But this safe space is struggling. Membership is declining, volunteers are harder to find, and costs are rising.
It's frustrating because sometimes you just throw up your hands in disgust and say, oh, what do we do? And then you have a successful karaoke night, or you have a celebration of life from a member that's long past, a long-time member, and it restores the energy.
Now that energy is going towards fundraising for a new elevator. It broke in February. The cost to fix it, $100,000. But without it, private groups are hesitant to book the space, and older veterans are forced to stay home.
You can imagine the loss we've had. Because if we're not accessible, they don't come. And then once people leave, it's hard to bring them back.
This financial pressure is being felt at some other legions too, still recovering from COVID closures. So from raffles to private parties and side hustles like meat pie fundraisers, branches are working every day to raise money and reach further into the community.
We just don't have the veterans. My generation, which is the early 60s on, they're not joining.
But relying on an older demographic makes it harder to cover big bills like utilities. In Edmonton, keeping the lights on costs about $16,000 a month.
It's very stressful. It keeps the manager asking where we're going to find the money.
But while some say they're struggling, the Royal Canadian Legion says most branches are thriving, seeing growing membership
Ontario's
and
most
savings.
And we hope you'll join us for our coverage on Remembrance Day, live from Ottawa, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. The Quebec couple will never forget this year's Halloween. They hit a jackpot for treats, quite literally. When Jean Larocque showed his winning lotto ticket to his wife Catherine, she thought it was a trick.
He said, "Oh, you've got to come see, I won." "Yeah, Jean, I'm baking. Leave me alone." And after all, he was shaking, he was white, he was sweating. And I says, "Well, I'm going to go see what the problem is." And we checked the ticket 4 times, maybe.
It certainly was the real deal, and the pair is now $55 million richer. Jean then slept with the ticket in the pocket of his pajamas before they could cash it in. First order of business, a trip to let it all sink in. Perfect way to celebrate. After the break,
it never gets old.
The Worldwide Light Show like no other. A dazzling display across North America and Europe last night as the Northern Lights lit up and danced across the sky. Making the display even more sensational this time was a kind of cosmic cannonball. As CTV's Alison Bamford tells us, the shows might get even brighter in the coming months.
A show some were lucky enough to catch and others even luckier to photograph. Vivid images of Sunday's Northern Lights danced across China, Europe, the US, and parts of Canada.
I've been photographing and chasing around for over 15 years, and it never gets old. I go out there and I'm just like a little kid smiling every time I see it.
Experts say the phenomenon is a result of a geomagnetic storm, which happens when the sun shoots off solar particles that end up hitting the Earth's magnetic field.
When you see the Northern Lights, what you're seeing is our planet destroying these rays that would otherwise absolutely destroy us.
The bigger the storm, the better the lights and a bigger viewing area. Sunday's storm bringing rare sightings as far south as Ukraine and northern Italy. Some areas seeing red, while others blue and green.
Luck of the draw. It's all a matter of your atmosphere. Reds tend to be associated with more nitrogen discharges. Greens more associated with oxygen discharges. Those are our two principal gases in the atmosphere.
Experts say we can likely expect to see more of these shows as the sun enters its peak storm season of an 11-year solar cycle.
And we are just getting into what's called a solar maximum. So we can anticipate that over the next year or so, we're going to be seeing lots of these big storms, which makes for very pretty lights in the sky. Scientists
say the last solar maximum was a bit of a letdown, which is why some anticipate this peak could pack more of a punch. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Regina.
Certainly beautiful. Nature is full of impressive gifts. That's a snapshot of this Monday for all of us at CTV National News. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Canadians have turned to CTV National News for more than 60 years.
And now there's a new national newscast at 5:30.
It's more of the news you trust.
More of the experience you rely on.
Watch Canada's #1 national news now at 5:30 and 11.
Tonight, the long-awaited exit. Dozens of Canadians get out of Gaza.
They're finally going to Cairo, and it's been a nightmare.
But hundreds of families are still left in the dark.
We haven't heard anything yet about my dad's exit.
As Israelis mark 1 month since the deadly Hamas attacks. Heavily armed police raid an innocent family's home in Edmonton. The wrongful takedown caught on camera. Plus, answering the call on smartphone addiction.
We're just understanding right now what some of these potentially negative effects of them may be.
Canadian researchers reveal the risks of too much screen time.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Exactly 1 month since the deadly Hamas attack, 75 Canadians, the first to leave Gaza, crossed the Rafah border into Egypt today. In Jerusalem, at the sacred Western Wall, Israelis mourned the victims gunned down at the music festival. Also there, families of the hostages still held captive, including Rachel Goldberg's 23-year-old son.
We cannot forget there are 240 people buried, but very much alive, under Gaza. The hostages have been underground in Gaza for 32 days!
In Gaza, Israel's air and ground offensive has crushed entire cities. Also today, in response to Benjamin Netanyahu's comments, Israel will take over security in Gaza indefinitely. The White House had this to say.
The president maintains his position that reoccupation by Israeli forces is not the right thing to do.
CTV's Kevin Gallagher leads us off.
Israeli airstrikes shook Gaza today, even in the south, where displaced Palestinians have been told to seek safety.
They show their might and power against civilians. Babies inside, kids inside.
It's a risk more than 600 Canadians, permanent residents, and family members share in the territory.
Obviously, it's very good news. We've got dozens of Canadians across the Rafah crossing, but there are hundreds to get out. So we're going to continue to work day and night until all Canadians and their families are out of Gaza.
It's been stressful.
Noura Bataniji is feeling relief as her 72-year-old